My wife and I had been together for almost 20 years when we ended things. It was by far one of the most difficult decisions I ever had to make, but I know that it was the right one. We met when we were in our early 20s, and it was pretty much love at first sight for me. I saw her and thought she was perhaps one of the most beautiful women I'd ever seen, so I approached her and asked her out. She actually ended up rejecting me the first time I asked her. It stung, but I moved on with my life. Even though she turned me down, I still found my mind wandering back to her from time to time. About 3 weeks after our first encounter, I ran into her again at the grocery store. I recognized her right away, and I thought that it was almost like fate that I ran into her. What struck me was that she recognized me too. I thought she would have instantly forgotten about me and carried on with some other person, but that wasn't the case. We started talking at the grocery store, and I decided I would ask her out a second time. This time, she said yes. I always loved telling everybody about how we met and our story, because I thought it highlighted that we were meant to be together. For 20 years in our marriage, everything was flawless. We made good money, we had a beautiful home, we had 4 children together, and everyone was happy and healthy. We had our fair share of arguments, but it was always something that we worked through and took the time to understand the root cause of the arguments to improve our relationship for the future. There was a point in our marriage where it felt like we were fighting almost every day. I remember thinking that it was one of the worst times in my life. Every day I was afraid that she and I would be getting a divorce. It was that bad. We ended up going to marriage counseling, and it helped us work through a lot of our issues. My wife and I recently decided that we wanted to put our house on the market and move into a new neighborhood. There were a lot of things we needed to do before listing it. One of the biggest ones that we had was getting rid of 20 years worth of accumulated junk. One day, I went up to the attic to go through some of the boxes we had stashed away up there to determine what needed to be trashed or sold. I found a box of my wife's old things and started going through it. I wasn't looking for anything in particular, but rather I was just sorting through it. At the bottom of the box, I found an old journal. All the time that I knew my wife, I had never known her to keep a journal or a diary or anything like that. Honestly, I thought it might have been something from her teenage years. I admit it might have been an invasion of privacy, but I let my curiosity win and I peeked inside. When I saw the dates on the entries, I realized they were from the time we were married. I almost decided to put the journal away and pretend like I hadn't seen it. It felt kind of invasive reading about thoughts that she had while we were together. But then some things stood out to me before I put it down, and they prompted me to keep reading. She continuously mentioned someone in the entries that she called Jade. Obviously, I'm not giving my name for privacy reasons, but it does not start with the letter J. It was clear that she and this J person were in some kind of a relationship. There were detailed entries about how she would pretend to go to a book club with some of the other ladies in our neighborhood, when in reality she was with him. She mentioned how the sex with him was the best that she ever had, and most of that was from sneaking around. I was heartbroken reading about it. She wrote about how she felt like she was falling for him, and she didn't know what to do because of me. She felt like she had met the love of her life, and it wasn't me. As if that wasn't enough to make me want to divorce her right then and there, and in one of the later entries she mentioned that our daughter saw her with her boyfriend. I was absolutely infuriated when I read that. She had been so careless with her affair that our child caught her with another man. In the entry, she mentioned how she was able to convince my daughter not to say anything because she didn't want to divorce me. She manipulated my daughter into lying to me throughout many years of her life. It was clear from the journal entries that the boyfriend knew he was sneaking around with a married woman. The anonymity that she held within the journal for him made me suspect that he was someone she was protecting. I wasn't a hot-headed or violent guy, so it's not like I would have done anything to hurt him. Instead, I thought she didn't want his life to be ruined if someone found out. I didn't know what to do. As much as I wanted to rush down the stairs and confront my wife, I needed to make sure we were handling it the right way. On top of that, I needed to figure out who the guy was. If he was one of our friends or a neighbor who was married with children, I needed to know. I left the attic with the journal in my hands and I hid it in my dresser. I was going to be bringing that to the divorce attorney. My wife was out of the house, so I took the time that I had alone to search through her social media profiles and emails. When I did, I found someone who I suspected of being the man. I had nearly forgotten he existed. He was someone that my wife and I would go on double dates with years before. He was one of our neighbors and a good friend at a certain point. My wife was close with him, and he and I would watch football games together from time to time. My wife came to me one day and told me she didn't want anything to do with them anymore. I questioned her at the time and asked her about what happened, and she just told me that his wife made some unsavory comments about how we were raising our children. I was never given an option to talk to them about it. My wife put her foot down and said that we were through with them. I respected her decision about it. I wasn't super invested in our friendship at the time, so I didn't care that much. Looking back now, I think that something happened with her and the other man that forced her to stay away. On top of that, a lot of the problems we were having in our marriage were around that time. Everything made sense looking back. All of the puzzle pieces were there, but I didn't know how to put them together. We still lived in the same neighborhood as them. They were only a few houses down from us. We ran into them from time to time, but we all tended to ignore each other. I played it cool after I found out what I did while I tried to figure out what I wanted to do. My wife didn't suspect anything, and I just pretended like everything was normal. A couple of days after I found out, I was out front mowing the lawn when I saw the other man drive away from his house. I had no idea where he was going or when he would be back, but I started walking over to his house before I could think better of it. It was a perfect opportunity to talk to his wife and see if she ever suspected anything was going on. I knocked on the door and she was surprised to see me, but she welcomed me inside and poured me a glass of iced tea. After a few minutes of small talk, I asked her outright if she ever suspected her husband cheated on her. She was taken aback by my question, but after a couple of moments, I think she realized that I was asking for a reason. She told me that there was a time when she did suspect he was cheating, and she thought that it was with my wife. She had been very uncomfortable with their relationship, and her husband had promised her that nothing was going on. Regardless, she asked them not to see each other anymore. Apparently, that's why the friendship between all four of us really ended. What she said confirmed in my mind that her husband was the man in the journals. I explained to her everything that I discovered, and I watched her heart break as she listened. I felt awful for telling her, but she deserved to know the truth. We came up with a plan to confront them together. I went home later that afternoon and told my wife that I ran into the old neighbor outside and that we wanted to get together for dinner. My wife was against it at first, but I told her that we needed to put the past behind us. I was able to convince her to come along with me. When we got there, the other couple was in the kitchen cooking dinner. The other man was surprised to see me, and there was some uncomfortable energy between everyone. I did notice that my wife and the other guy hardly even made eye contact during everything. We all sat down for dinner, and when the conversation stilled, I brought up how we were selling the house, and I was looking through the attic and found my wife's old journal. She nearly spit up her wine when I mentioned finding that. She seemed to be frustrated that I read it, but I ignored her and revealed the contents of it. When I was done, I outright asked her and the other man how their affair started. They tried to deny it, but there was no use. They admitted to everything, and my wife was pleading with me to leave so we could talk about it in private. I told her that I didn't want to talk about it in private, and I forced her to tell me everything right there. Apparently, through all of the double dates that we went on, she and the other guy started to develop feelings. One night, while they were over at our house and we had a few glasses of wine, they were getting a little handsy while they were alone. From there, they had sex for the first time, and they continued a 5-year-long affair. My wife developed feelings that the other man didn't have. She wanted to leave me to be with him, but he didn't want to leave his wife. Because of that, my wife cut everything off. Both myself and my neighbor told them that we didn't want anything to do with them after this. There was no coming back from it, and we would be leaving. I told my wife that I had already been talking to a divorce attorney. She broke down and cried, pleading with me to forgive her. She told me that it was one of her biggest regrets, and she would take it all back in an instant if she could. On top of everything, I told her how disgusting it was that she involved our daughter in the lie. Over the next several months, we went about getting our divorce. Throughout all of it, my wife tried to convince me just to go to counseling and to forgive her. I wasn't listening to any of it. We already had the house listed for sale, so we agreed it would be best to continue with that. Wave split the sale cost of the house, and half of that was all she was awarded in the divorce. I didn't owe her anything beyond that point, and because she involved our daughter in the affair and convinced her to lie, I was ruled in favor of custody. My children still see their mother, but I have been working with them as best as I can to make sure they're not going to be too damaged by all of this. My daughter, who was involved in the lie, has expressed how sorry she was for keeping it for so long. She felt guilty throughout the years, but she didn't know what to do because she didn't want to destroy the family. At this point, I have no love for my ex. Had she not involved our daughter, I might have been able to look back at some memories fondly. But the guilt that she put on our child is abhorrent, and I can't stand to be around her because of that. OP, I can't believe you had to go through all of that. Finding out that your partner has cheated on you is awful enough, but after you've dedicated so much time to them is unbelievable. Carrying on a 5-year-long affair is not an easy feat, so she must have had to do quite a bit of lying and deception to cover that up. It's truly disgusting that she allowed your daughter to lie for so long. I can't imagine the weight of withholding that information on a child. I felt heartbroken when you mentioned that your daughter was worried about being the one to ruin your family because your wife convinced her to lie. No child should have to harbor a secret like that, and your wife should be ashamed for making her. I can't imagine how it must have felt to find out that your wife had feelings for another person and wanted to leave you. Had it not been for the other man wanting to stay with his wife, all of this might have ended a lot sooner. I think from the way it sounds, he didn't have the same feelings that she did. She seemed like she was just a mistress to him, and she wanted more. I'm glad you and the neighbor both got divorced and can move past this. I am wishing you and your children nothing but the best, and I hope that you guys can move forward strongly as a family. Now, let's move on to our next story. My girlfriend and I have been together for 3 years. We met in our biology class during college, and we enjoyed our lab time together. I asked her out on a study date before anything else, and she agreed to go with me. We ended up talking about everything but biology, and we both failed the test that we were attempting to study for. We had a really strong connection, and I saw a future with her regardless of us being very young at the time. I never really had the desire to mess around with a lot of women. I thought that I found one, and I was content with being with her. We graduated college, and we moved in together right away. We both had a hard time landing good jobs after graduating, but after a little while we were starting to settle into everything. My girlfriend studied marketing and communications in college, and part of her thesis project was to study how people became influencers. Her project was to become one herself. She was able to gain a significant following and brand deals that she still has to this day. Because of that, she was able to work on growing her following and eventually start working for herself. It wasn't a conventional job by any means, but I was supportive of her, and she was doing something she enjoyed, so I was happy. At first, most of her followers seemed to be women who were interested in fashion and makeup tips, but after a while, her follower demographic turned to a lot of men. She's a very beautiful woman, and I totally understand why the men were following her. Unfortunately, because her audience had transitioned to mostly men, her content catered to them more. She was posting pictures and more revealing clothes and bikinis, and a lot of the captions became more suggestive. I was a little insecure about what she was posting. I didn't like to know that a bunch of other men had seen my girlfriend in that way. There's nothing wrong with women posting things like that online, but I'm a very private person, so it was hard for me to get past that. I knew that she got dozens of DMs a day from men wanting to sleep with her. Sometimes she would even show them to me, and we would laugh about them together. As unhappy as I was with other men seeing her the way they did, I was confident that she wouldn't act on anything. I didn't think that she would anyway. My girlfriend is sort of an old-fashioned type of romantic. She likes a partner who will do little, chivalrous things for her. There are some things that she just doesn't think that she should be the one to do, and one of those is clean her car. I don't really mind doing it. Acts of service are a great way for me to show that I care. so it's a small price to pay to make her happy. So, one day I was cleaning out her car, and I found something that raised a lot of red flags for me. Underneath the passenger side seat was a condom wrapper. Right away, I knew that it wasn't mine. My girlfriend and I don't have sex in the car, and on top of that, we've been together long enough that we've had talks about protection, and we weren't using condoms. So someone else had been in my girlfriend's car that needed a condom. My girlfriend had to have cheated on me. There was no question in my mind at the time. Right away, I tried looking for any evidence that I could through social media, but I couldn't find much. I needed to figure out who it was before I confronted her, and she tried to lie about it. When I went inside, she was on the couch sleeping while a television show played in the background. It was excellent timing, so I grabbed her phone and started looking through it. I searched through her messages for keywords that people having an affair might type in. Eventually, my best friend's phone number came up. They have been talking about sleeping together for a while. It started when my girlfriend posted a picture of herself at the beach on her Instagram. He reached out to her and told her that he hadn't been able to stop thinking about the picture. My girlfriend told him that she was flattered to hear him say that. She had thought about him for a while. Their messages were extremely sexual, and my girlfriend even initiated sending nudes to him. She was obviously very excited to see those, and he told her that he needed to see her ASAP. Without hesitation, my girlfriend told him that she wanted to as well. They made plans right away to get together and hook up. He had a girlfriend that he lived with, so I had no doubts that the condom wrapper was in the car because they hooked up there to avoid being caught. After they had sex, they texted each other talking about how much fun they had. From there, they seemed to have met up countless other times. Both of them mentioned how they enjoyed sneaking around with each other. They were both turned on by the possibility of being caught by us. I was furious, and right away I knew that I was going to be leaving my girlfriend. If she liked my friend so much, she could go and be with him for all I cared. I couldn't stand to look at her any longer. I sent myself as much evidence as I could, then I set my girlfriend's phone back down. If they were going to completely betray my trust and disregard the care that I had for them, then I was going to get my payback on them. I knew that my girlfriend kept her social media profiles logged in on her laptop, so while she was still asleep, I went over to them. I changed the password on her Instagram account so she couldn't log in easily. I took the screenshots that I had of her messages with my best friend, and I posted them on her wall and story. I even wrote a caption about how she cheated. I made sure to tag my former best friend in the post as well. The comments quickly rolled in, and I started to feel kind of bad. Then I remembered that she completely disrespected me, and I didn't care anymore. Her follower count was dropping. I could almost watch it happen. The post was being shared countless times, and I felt like I had won a small victory. My girlfriend woke up about half an hour later, completely oblivious to what was happening in her life. When she realized, she screamed and found me sitting at her computer. She was angry with me, but I just told her that I wanted her to leave the apartment. My best friend was trying to call me and explain what happened, but I blocked his number and ignored him. His girlfriend reached out to me, however. She had a lot of questions, and I did what I could to answer them. She ended up breaking up with him too. I kicked my girlfriend out of the apartment and let her deal with the aftermath of everything I had just done. I kept an eye on things for a while, and at first I thought that she blocked me on social media because I couldn't find her account. However, I learned that she actually deleted it. It was her main source of income, and she had to completely get rid of it. A lot of the brands that she worked with pulled their sponsorships because what she did didn't align with their values. Having their brand attached to her name was a liability after the fact. I don't know what she's doing now, and I don't care. All I know is that she had her entire life ruined because she screwed me over. OP, I'm really sorry you had to go through all of this. It's such a shame that your girlfriend would throw away a relationship with somebody who was obviously a very caring and attentive partner. In the end, it's never worth it to cheat on somebody. I understand that people have their personal turn-ons and fetishes, but if that is going to lead to somebody else getting hurt, you shouldn't be so selfish. It sounds like your girlfriend was very quick to sleep with your friend too. She definitely had some feelings for him before he reached out. He wasn't a very good friend if he was so tempted to reach out to her and hook up. I have to wonder if maybe there had been some flirtatious conversations before all of that. I think that karma came and got your girlfriend in the end. It's great how the brands pulled their sponsorship of her after she did something so bad. Not a lot of companies care about things like that, but when you're banking on an influencer getting your target audience to buy things, then you kind of have to care. I hope you're able to move on from this. Not everybody is as selfish and careless as your ex-girlfriend, and I hope you can find somebody who really values everything you're putting into your relationships. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, comment below with your thoughts on what happened. If there is a story you would like to share with me about your own situation or someone else's, then please do not hesitate to contact me. Take care.